you may know me, or you may not know me from Liam's channel. Liam's spoke about me before many times in the comments or in the videos. He even held up my book when it was before it was launched, and so I'm always thankful for Liam for promoting me like that. And you probably know, Liam, by now that that book went to #1 on Amazon across the Middle East, and for a fair while.
That's amazing.
Yeah, then it moved out the top thousands, and it came back into the top 50. And so it's been a real blessing. It's helped me really reach out and maintain a platform of expertise, if you like, in my field, which is counseling psychology and advanced NLP techniques and what I call transformational coaching. So that's what I do for a living. Yep. So I combine all those modalities into one, and create some type of hopefully some type of freedom for my clients who come to me where they're stuck or they're trapped emotionally, and I'm able to use my skill sets, which I've developed over 25 years, to help them get some type of freedom on the other side of those linguistic narratives, which trap us all, because the vocabulary that we use is very much insightful, and how we believe our world to be with our internal narratives and the pictures we build creates our reality, which is what brought us together in effect for this particular Zoom call, so we could actually unpack that, because I'm very, very curious into the situation you had, not just with your tinnitus, but with your food poisoning, which quickly escalated into septicemia or some type of horrific blood disease, which culminated in you losing a couple of toes, or the ends of your toes.
All of them. All the ends of basically on the left foot, it's like all the toes. It's kind of just like a stump. So if you want to imagine, like, that's the foot there. The right foot kind of looks like this a little bit, and then the left foot's just like that. And it's funny because since they've gone, how's this for how amazing the body is? Since they've gone smaller, they've kind of started to web together to create like this weird sort of fish foot, like some sort of hybrid thing.
Amazing. It's amazing, isn't it? Because within the body, and we'll get into this later, so we just stay on track before we sort of digress too much and segue too much. Yeah. But so that's what I do. I live in Dubai, therapist, coach, and what is known as a mind architect. And I have a very successful business here as an author, as a therapist, as a coach. And so that's what I do. And Liam, so if you can introduce yourself to my audience and tell us a bit about you, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. So for the people who don't know me, Darren's audience, I work with people with tinnitus. So that is tinnitus could be a ringing in the ears, it could be noise sensitivity, it could be things like a heartbeat in the ear, or you can have balance issues, so vertigo, and I got into that because I had it myself. So I won't go too much into my story and all about like the sort of trauma and the emotional problems and sort of like the loneliness and hopelessness that it can cause if you don't have, the emotional control that I'm sure we're going to talk about. But basically tinnitus is a disease, or it's a condition that's basically seen as, a doctor or an ENT might call it idiopathic, which means it has no cause, and they'll call it chronic, which means ongoing. So for the viewers who might not know, acute is short-term and chronic is long-term. So if you break a leg, you might have acute pain, but then you might have chronic pain if it doesn't fix properly, and it goes on and on and on. So I had that. I had it for 3 years, and it got worse and worse. I basically was planning, I'm just going to kill myself. And at this age, I was about early 20s. When I got it, I was 21, and then when I fixed it, I was about 25 years old, maybe late 24. And then I basically thought, fuck it, I'm going to, excuse the French, but I'm going to fix it. I'm going to, cure it, or I'm just going to die trying. And then I started to basically say, the doctors don't know anything. All they've told me is to take antidepressants, and all they've said is it's idiopathic subjective tinnitus, and there's no cure, and you've got hearing loss and all this rubbish that now I know is complete garbage. And I basically went on this sort of journey internally, which would be very cool to talk about, I think, and externally. And I basically reversed it completely. And so I had tinnitus and hyperacusis, and hyperacusis is noise sensitivity. And I completely fixed it. People ask me, how long did it take? And, I could say 4 years, but a more accurate description would be, I tried so many different things, and I did things in the wrong order. And a lot of failing forward. I love that saying, failing. If you're going to fail, land on your back so you can look up. That's a Les Brown saying, and I really, really like that. I'm not huge on like the motivation side of things. I like the structure and the applicableness of, if someone's going to tell me something, I want to know what am I going to do when I get home? How can I apply this? but I basically fixed it, and now I help other people do the same. And so I almost have a bit of a vendetta out against doctors. Not really, some of them. The doctors who don't care. There's good and bad people in everything, isn't there? And that is, you should never blanket statement any type of profession or person. I think that's just ridiculous. But so I do that now. I've been doing that for about 2.5 years, quite a little while. I got a YouTube channel. It's growing a lot. It's getting quite big. I did a bit of a sort of very, very amateur documentary around America, and I just went and recorded, 3 of my preferred and favorite doctors on tinnitus, and one of them was a Chinese herbalist, one of them was a chiropractor, and one of them was an expert with using bones to move the skull plates. And so, I work with people from celebrities all the way down to like teenagers, all the way to like doctors, even lawyers. Even my own mum, I helped her silence her tinnitus, which is, I think that was one of the coolest things ever. So, if anyone's going to get tinnitus, you want to be lucky, it's probably going to be one of my family members, because I can just, help you with that. So, yeah, and I'm 27 as well, Melbourne, Australia, and that's what I do.
Amazing. Yeah, it's been an amazing journey to watch, Liam, because people may or may not know that I also have tinnitus, which is for the same amount of time as you. It's now coming up 3.5 years. It'll be 4 years in October since I created a deafness in my left ear from a free diving accident. And then the tinnitus came a month later in the left side primarily. Then it moved over to the right side to join in, I think a month after that. And then since then, I've had my own journey with it continuously on and off for the last almost 4 years. And so that's how we met primarily, I believe. I reached out to you, and because I was looking the same way as you did for answers to a condition, which is truly testing. I think that's the best way to put it. It's in the way. I don't want to over dramatize it, but until you've had it, you cannot appreciate what this condition is.
Yeah, speaking of like the horrificness of tinnitus or tinnitus, however, wait, let me just see if I can turn this brightness up. Sorry, one. Oh, no, I can't. All good. Sorry. Yeah, just to really explain to people how bad tinnitus is. People say, ENTs, if someone has tinnitus listening to this, you have a ringing in your ears, why can't you just ignore it? It's, it's not that bad. But if you think about a ringing, like sort of like or whatever the pitch is in your ear, all day, every day, no matter what. And, I have people who, for example, I would never forget this lady who, she came to me after she survived breast cancer. So she had breast cancer, and she did the chemotherapy, and she actually ended up getting a double mastectomy, which is when you get both breasts removed, because she actually beat it, I believe, but the doctors just said, you know what, like, it's probably best if we just remove your breast, because she was 60, I think. And so we'll remove the breasts just to make sure it doesn't come back. And so very traumatic experience, and during the chemotherapy, the drugs actually gave her tinnitus. And she found me about a year after her tinnitus started. And she said to me, Liam, the chemotherapy was awesome, the vomiting, the shitting blood all day long, and just like the dizziness and the horrificness, and watching your family watch you fall to pieces. But she said to me, I would rather go through that all again than, have tinnitus. If I could choose to do that and just go through it all again, and then my tinnitus would be gone, she would sign on the dotted line. Yeah. So people just don't realize how bad it is. So if you, not to like, as you said, dramatize on the horrificness of it, but, if you have like cancer, you do get moments of respite. You'll get like a day where you're sitting out, you have your good days and your bad days, and you're, when you don't have chemotherapy, you feel okay as long as you're not taking, certain drugs that might make you feel sick. Or if you have, let's say, early, all sorts of different conditions, diabetes, if you have glaucoma, skin problems, anything like the irritable bowel syndrome, you can still have brief periods where you can just forget about it. Like, it's nice to just spend time with the family, because then I can forget about the horribleness. But with tinnitus, that's been stolen. Any moment of like just getting away from the illness or the ailment has been completely stolen from you, because it's always there. And that's why I think it's so underrated. It's just, and it hasn't been looked into properly at all. Hasn't been researched properly at all. There's barely any research, and we can get into why I think that is. But yeah, in terms of the trauma, I mean, I'll tell you what, the trauma starts when you go first see the ENT and they say there's no cure. That's where the trauma starts, in my eyes.
Yeah, no doubt. And you touched upon it earlier. The ENT who are doing their best, their knowledge of tinnitus is so minimal because it's such a minimal part of their course when they're becoming trained as an ENT specialist. There are so few ENT specialists that understand tinnitus at a level of, say, yourself or me, because we've spent 4 years studying it so intently, because when you suffer from something, you want to relieve yourself of that suffering, which takes you on a journey of discovery, right? And, depending on your character, and I know that you're very intense, and I'm also very intense, but when it comes to learning something and trying to understand something, that is what I do, which is why tinnitus became such an integral part of my life, by studying every available modality, both mainstream and alternative, which brought me to you and has brought me to any number of discoveries, not just physically, but in my field psychologically, which maintains this condition. And again, we will discuss this as we move forward. But you see, we have a conundrum here. We have a paradox, because the human brain, as you know, was not designed to keep us happy. It was designed to keep us safe. And so it's always trying to predict a future event which may cause pain or suffering and move away from it. So we have this need to control our present moment in order to feel safe in our world. Yet when we have instructed, what I call the RAS in the brain, the reticular activating system, which is effectively a part of the brain which takes orders from us by where we focus our direction. If I've told my RAS in my brain that, hey, this noise represents a threat to my peace and tranquility and my happiness and my state of being, the brain then takes that as a directive and then brings that into your conscious awareness and keeps it there because you deemed it a threat. And the brain is always trying to offset threats by helping you with predicting what it is that you're trying to either move away from or move towards to. The brain doesn't differentiate. It just takes clear directions based on your feeling. And so if I'm feeling scared or angry or anxious, and I send a message to my brain to say, hey, this noise represents a massive threat to my tranquility and my state of being, the brain cannot distinguish between a lion that's behind the rock that wants to eat you from a high-pitched whistling or electrical buzz in your brain that represents a threat to your being, which stimulates the survival mechanism. We go into fight or flight, and then we have these massive amounts of adrenaline and stress hormones and cortisone.
And then it's just a cycle. Exactly, and it just goes around again. Yeah, because you're more stressed.
So what happens then, Liam, of course, as you know, and this is not just for you because you know it, but for my clients and your clients, what happens is the escalation in the noise creates a bigger response from us to send a message to the RAS to say, I'm getting more scared, I'm more upset, I'm more anxious, I'm more angry, which in turn creates more stress hormones, more cortisol, more adrenaline, more norepinephrine, and then the nervous system, which is then goes into fight or flight. What you can hear in your brain is the buzz of the nervous system, which is then always on until you can drop into the parasympathetic nervous system and get back to resting, recovering, and digesting. Yet most tinnitus sufferers rarely stimulate the parasympathetic because they're always looking out for the noise, which means they're always in survival.
Yeah, and I mean, the brain is actually quite good at blocking out non-essential things. Like, for example, your brain actually blocks out your nose. So you can actually quite easily see your nose, but your brain blocks it out because obviously part of that is it's not essential, it's not a threat. So it completely blocks it out. And you're right about the RAS. Like if you, there's really good tests you can do where if you tell someone to look at a crowd and think about everyone wearing a white shirt, I want you to pick them out. How many people are wearing a white shirt? Now close your eyes. Okay, how many people are wearing red? And they can't tell you if there is even probably one person who was wearing red. They can't figure it out.
That's right.
That's a really crucial thing as well. I think the thing with the nervous system is, here's my sort of, theory on tinnitus and the nervous system and the role that it plays. So, there's the whole theory that, the nervous system has quite a massive electric component, and it uses things like saturated fat and EZ, which is called exclusion zone water, to use as like a conduit to, electrical charges can pulse, and you can use things like sunlight and grounding to stimulate negative charge, which is EZ. So that's why a lot of people benefit from sunlight and grounding. And, people say, oh, you do things that are relaxing and this will help. And I think it's the relaxing, but it's what we're talking about here, which is specifically things like the nervous system and things like the endoplasmic reticulum, which ties in with the mitochondria. But the interesting thing about, personally, here's the thing: when you look at the really cool, interesting studies on meditation and mindfulness and whatever meditative state it is, they have a direct effect on the electrical, the electrical power, basically, of our cells and of our nervous system. So it directly affects that, and it can kick it into overdrive if you're stressed out. So things like the parasympathetic nervous system and the adrenal hormones, which come from the adrenal glands, which are above the kidneys, they're controlled by the thyroid gland, and they're in the base of everything. They're really controlled by electricity. And so we have things like we have neurotransmitters, and we have the electrical capacity of our cells, and that all really does a tie kind of back. It all really does. Meditation is quite a huge part. So it actually directly affects the mitochondria's ability to make ATP and power the ears. But then again, there are so many different. This is why tinnitus is such a complicated thing, because there's so many different causes. I got mine from, I think I would say, a combination of poor diet and noise trauma from drums. You got yours from obviously a physical injury, or whether the stress from the physical injury that you got. Other people, I've got a guy at the moment who got it from boxing, from a perforated eardrum. I get people who get it from literally getting an electric shock. People who get divorced, chemotherapy, medications, neck problems. So it's like, what is it? It's like, it's not one cause, you know what I mean? Like if you look at someone who's an orthopedic surgeon, they're going to learn about the joints, and they're going to understand, how the joints work and focusing on one thing. But when you look at tinnitus, you have to look at everything in the body, like how's the blood flow to the brain. And if you're, doing things like eating excessive amounts of carbohydrates or coffee, you're dehydrating the brain and cutting off blood flow. And so, there's the meditative side, which is like, the RAS, tuning out of the tinnitus. And I think that's actually a big part, because the biggest risk when you keep thinking about it and like, is it louder? Is it quieter? I'm going to eat this cupcake and write in my journal how much louder it is. You're really like fucking yourself up big time, because you're just focusing on it again and again and again. And when, what's that saying? It's like, where your focus goes, energy flows. And it couldn't be more true than it is with tinnitus, because the more stressed out you get and the more, more you tune into it, the harder it's going to get to, sometimes I find that for people to get from, they can get their tinnitus down from like, let's say like a 5 to a 1, or even like these numbers for people listening, they're like self-given numbers. So you yourself decide how loud you think it is. But when it gets down to a 1, sometimes the best thing to do is to just try and forget about it. And that lack of stress can actually contribute to, better bodily functions. Like everybody sort of knows now that stress is it's a killer, really. It can result in it can stop a heart. It's pretty amazing. Like, if you scare somebody or you do a jump scare to a person who has a weak heart, or even if you give somebody good news, like they win the lottery, they can get a heart attack from, any sort of stimulation. And it's, of course, the heart and the brain are the two biggest clusters of mitochondria. And where are we seeing all these, we can talk about electricity or whatever you like to, but the biggest problems in health really for the most part are like, heart, people that die of heart disease, and the rate of Alzheimer's is going through the roof. And I'm sure obviously, doing what you do with NLP, and I don't know much about NLP, but I know what it is, like neuro-linguistic programming. I think it's really cool. It's that guy who was, he has a lot to do with hypnotism, right? The guy who sort of helped invent it, or he wrote the book on it. He was someone Wyatt or something. What's his name?
The guys who invented it, who created it, were Dr. Richard Bandler and John Gringer.
Yeah.
And obviously famous people like Paul McKenna. You know, the hypnotists now, they all use NLP. Tony Robbins, he was also an original partner of Dr. Richard Bandler, and he uses NLP continually in all his seminars. And, you know, he is the number one go-to guy for motivation. You know, the guy's worth $800 million for a reason, because he gets results. And so, NLP is an incredibly powerful modality that effectively understands the subjective reality of an individual person and how we're creating our reality one moment at a time, inside out, as opposed to outside in. And so it's not the event or the circumstance or the person that's creating our mood or our emotion. It's the meaning we give to that event, person, or circumstance that comes into our world, which then becomes our reality based on what we make sense of, right? So 8 billion people, effectively, we have 8 billion different worlds. Everybody's experiencing the world subjectively. And that's effectively what NLP is. It's understanding how you make sense of the world based on this unique filtering system, which is nothing more than a combination of your memories and your emotions attached to memories and your experiences and the meaning you give to all those things. If you can change the meaning, you change everything about your life. Because if I change the meaning I give to something, my reality changes immediately.
Yeah, exactly. And you can almost look at it like, do you remember that Alec Baldwin, the character that Alec Baldwin played in Friends?
Yeah.
And he was dating Phoebe, and like everything was amazing. Like, oh my God, look at this. Like, I'm being arrested. It's amazing. Or whatever he went through. Like, I dropped a plate. It's amazing. Like, he was just happy. So everyone else was experiencing exactly the same things. There was literally no difference. But all it was, and I've been looking at a bit into as well, things like, you know, do we really have like free will, and like are our decisions, like I feel like our decisions are sort of, it's just a big combination of everything we've experienced, and then how we've felt about that, we take more actions, and then because you know, everything, all the decisions we make today, the emotional responses which trigger like the decision or a reaction or how we feel about it, it's just because of all the ways we've interpreted everything that's happened to us in the past. So, you know, you could say that we don't have free will because we're just going along. We're just a culmination of all my experiences. But then, you know, you can sort of choose how you experience things, and you can do it like very, very quickly as well. And I don't know, we actually want to ask you about this and what you think about this, but I think that one of the worst things that people can do is to complain about their situation. I mean, I get it. If you're going to talk to someone about your problems, that's great. But just to complain about it, and also if you say like, this is wrong with my life, and leave it at that, you're really putting yourself at a disadvantage. Because what I find helps when I get people to do, and I want to get your take on this, but people, you know, in my own group can talk about how if they're having a bad day or whatever happens, but they have to end it with how they're going to solve it. There has to be some sort of solution. I think that gets them thinking on the go get it, like positive sort of side. Is that, do you get I mean, you know, obviously know a lot more about psychology than I do. So do you get people to do that, or do you agree with that, or what do you think?
It's the cornerstone of everything I do. It's foundational. If you cannot take full responsibility for everything that shows up in your life, then you are disempowering yourself. The cause effect, you're either on the effect side of life or you're on the cause side of life. To be on the effect side of life means things are happening to you, that you're a victim. You take no responsibility for whatever's happening in your life. Things are showing up and they're happening to you. Or you can be on the cause side of effect and realize that everything is happening for you and it's your choice how to respond. So look at the word responsibility, responsibility, the ability to respond. So when I say to people,
I like that. I like that a lot. That's great.
People, I'm not asking you to take the blame here. Be very clear, but I am asking you to be responsible, 100% responsible. Break the word down. Response-able, able to respond. Be accountable. Yeah. Be accountable for what shows up in your life. Able to account for whatever shows up and arrives in your life, because you now have a choice of how you apply what is the meaning you give to it and therefore becomes your reality. If you point the finger at life, I know it's a cliche, when you point the finger, 3 look back at you. So life is actually telling you, hey, take responsibility. Stop giving your power away by saying, you did this to me. You broke my heart. You took my job. You stole my money. You cheated on me. Life's responsible for my suffering. COVID-19, Black Lives Matter.
Oh God, yeah, I know. Yeah.
It's all external. It's all external drivers of your emotion. And unless you can take back responsibility and choose how to respond to it, you remain a victim and ultimately disempowered. So the foundation of what I teach is everything that's happened in your life has happened for you, not to you. And if you can get that, truly get that, a level of freedom will trickle through you like never before. Why? Because all of a sudden, you are going to take on board full responsibility in the way you choose to respond, because that is your superpower. Your superpower as a human being is not the events that are going to come into our life and test us, because they will, as part of the journey. Your superpower is, what meaning do I apply to whatever has shown up in my life, including tinnitus, migraines, heartbreak, poverty, illness. We always get a choice to give meaning to whatever shows up in our life. Because if it was the event, Liam, itself, the response would be universal. And we know that's not true. Our response to everything as a human species is completely subjective, based on the meaning you give to the event, right?
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And I was going to ask you, actually, what do you think about this? It's kind of like I'm sure it's probably been spoken about or written about. I'm sure you've definitely thought about it, but taking that responsibility, like the idea of like, I really like that responsible, like how high is your capacity to respond to extremely stressful things? But I kind of think in my life, I take it a step further, and I sort of think, obviously not things that are out of my control, but anything that happens to me, I think, this is it's always been, that was my fault. So like, not your fault, but like, it's sort of like, that was completely me. And there's a really great story that, almost doesn't really cut it, but it's kind of like hyper responsibility. So there's a great story in a book I read by this author who's a really great businessman, and he's a really cool guy. And he has a story, and I'll just quickly summarize it. But basically, it's a fictional story, but there's a father and a daughter and a mother, and the daughter goes to sleep over at another girl's house. And, the other mother calls up and says, your daughter is sick. So the father has to go and pick up his daughter from the other girl's house. On the way back, it's a Friday night at 1 a.m., and it's it's like a university village, or whatever they call it in the United States, a college village, where, you can drive at 16 and there's probably going to be drunk people doing silly things. And he thinks, oh, you know what, there are police out and there's people doing responsible things and they're being adults. I'll just drive through there. And he drives through, and a drunk driver hits him and kills him and his daughter instantly. And the moral of that story was, it was his fault. It's actually that guy's fault. And the reason is because it kind of was. Because he knew there were going to be drunk drivers around there, and he chose to drive through the area where drunk drivers are. And I think people put their power, they basically piss on their own personal power when they think like, oh, the government will protect me, or the police are there to protect me, or not saying they aren't or they're not, but the laws, I'm going to rely on someone else to do this. And if you think you're taking the easy way out by giving your responsibility to someone else, but you're actually putting yourself at such a disadvantage. Really, when it comes to anything, if you take financial advice from like an accountant, or you let an accountant do it, and your accountant like also does the books for like a gangster or something like that, and you think maybe it's questionable, but oh no, there's regulations to protect me, and then he steals all your money and goes off to the Bahamas, that's completely your fault. Or you sign a contract without looking, and then it's a terrible contract and you're screwed for the rest of your life, completely your fault. And it's like, even if somebody, in some instances like broke the law, you should have put up parameters to protect yourself, because that that's a possibility, and that can lead down to like, oh, I'm stressing about everything, but you got to sort of weigh it off with a bit of common sense. But what do you think about that? Like, we could talk about my recent sickness, but instantly I just thought, oh, it's whatever I've done, I did it to myself. I never for a second thought, I'm going to sue this person. I'm going to do this. This is an outrage. I just thought, oh, what have I done to myself this time? That's a shame. Oh, well, what do we do now? That was it, straight away. And when we can talk about that. But yeah, what do you think about, obviously, I think you're nodding, so maybe you agree with just hyperactive.
You're talking about personal responsibility there, because let's imagine that for a moment it's not your fault. Just imagine. Let's play it again hypothetically. It's not your fault.
Yeah.
Your choices are, if it's not your fault, is to again point the finger at whatever you believe is to blame for your suffering and hold that responsible forever and a day for whatever happened to you. Right? That's one choice. Or you think to yourself, what part did I play in this? Did I bring this onto myself through a series of choices and consequences? Is this my karma playing out? Was this a lesson that I had to learn in order for me to transcend a particular problem I'm stuck with by dealing with the trauma and the fallout of this situation? For me, whether I brought that onto me or I was the cause directly, I will always sit at the cause side, which means everything may not be my fault, but everything is my choice based on how I respond to that which I'm observing or experiencing. 100%. 100%. The moment I blame an external event for my suffering, I disempower myself and have no chance whatsoever of rectifying whatever it is I'm blaming. It's impossible.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah. I like that a lot. Yeah, no, and I agree. Like there's a chronic, you can really sort of, I wish I had like a specific story to like, give an example of people who don't think that way. And I think that people who don't think that way, they really, really, hate for anything to be their fault. Like, for example, if you have, let's say you have like an office space, and like there's like a printer that always jams or something. And like, let's say that you just went and, scanned something, and then you come back to your desk, and then like Janet or David or whoever comes up and does something like, oh, the printer's jammed. Oh, who used it? Oh, Liam was just using it. And it's like, oh, what's wrong? It's, oh, Liam jammed it. Like, would you, and it's like, when you're like, and then let's say that happens, you're like, oh, bummer. And then you find out that it wasn't you, and really that like, so she was pressing the wrong thing, or he did this something wrong, or like, the cord was unplugged. It's like, what kind of person would you be? You would be like, oh, see, I told you, like even jokingly, like for your ego, you're just like, oh, see, like I told you, oh, silly James. Or would you just like go, I don't care, and just like, it's fixed. Okay, good. Like, so I see people do this, and people think that's not a big deal. Like, he just wanted people to know that he didn't jam the printer. But it's like, why? Like, why do you care so much about these little tiny things? And generally, people who do care about those little things really have not such a good life, because they let things happen to them, and they don't have control of their emotions, and they generally sort of freak out. And, that's why... That's why kind of in my videos now, I just tell people to shut the fuck up and take a bit of action, because they're like, I see them as like, like flailing about sort of like seaweed in the water, in the water. And they've never had someone come into their life and just like smack them across the face, because they have people in their life who maybe just don't care. They have teachers who don't care. They're punching in, punching out. They have parents who are just like, they're just too stressed out with everything to like sit down and really, train their kid to be hard. And their friends are all blamers too. I'm sure there's probably a book written about this whole topic, and I'm sure they characterize people as like blamers, and like, people who give blame, and people who choose, they actively look for situations where they can take the blame to put that responsibility on themselves and learn from it. They think like, it's like, if something breaks or doesn't work, it's like, does a person think like, oh, who did that? Or do they think, oh, did I do that? Not in a bad way, but like, and that's the hardest thing to do with like an illness or tinnitus or something like that, is to go like, this is so awful. Fuck, did I do it to myself? Like nobody wants to think that they hurt themselves, or that they made a bad decision, or that they, whatever sort of thing. Yeah, it's just such a interesting thing. It's not only for tinnitus, but just for general health and relationships and everything. It's getting that emotional. But how do you think you balance that with, the emotional side of, things, and, really being able to feel things, and then like sort of crushing that and, you know, sort of putting the emotions to the side. Because I think that if we all listen to our emotional aspect, we'd all love to give the blame to somebody else. And, you know, we'd all love to, you know, protect our egos. But then, you know what I mean? Like, how do you sort of balance that out, do you think? And sort of in a healthy way, and don't just crush everything emotional down. And then your life isn't very colorful.
Well, we are, as an expression of life, part of the duality of the universe, right? The universe is a duality, and we're an expression of that, which means to hold a space for being human, which is an integral part of understanding what we're here to do, which is to learn. And we learn through adversity and pain. And so our point of reference for joy and pleasure will be the suffering and pain that we've experienced on the other side of that duality. So first, to hold that space of unconditional love for ourselves, knowing that we're doing the best we can with the tools available to us at any given time, right? And so to, first of all, hold that space for yourself, knowing that you're doing your best with the tools available. But once you've done that, come back to your greatest intelligence and ask a question. Am I better served by taking responsibility for everything that's showing up in my life for me? Or is it easier and more empowering for me to blame somebody else for my suffering and leave it over there? It's rhetorical, of course, because anybody with half a brain cell will realize that, okay, maybe this is the first time they're hearing this, Liam, that they are victims, that they blame the world for their pain and their suffering. I get it. You know, the world can be a difficult place to live. It really can. And dreadful things happen, or painful things happen to very good people. It's inevitable. It's part of the journey. Yet how you show up and respond to that which enters your life will define how pleasurable or how miserable your life is going to be from here on in. It's always a choice. Let me go back to your superpower. It's not to control the events in life, because they are totally uncertain. Your only superpower is to give meaning to that which shows up in your life. You can blame people, but that takes away your power instantaneously, because your choices are minimal or non-existent when you believe an external event is causing your misery. Right? Yeah. When you take full responsibility, even when you know that you're a good person and you didn't deserve that, it happened. It's done. What are you going to do about it now to rectify for your own biology, for your own chemistry, for your own well-being? Because being a victim and pointing the finger, you are creating so much stress for yourself, or distress. Yeah. Which leads to a lack of ease in the body, which leads to an absence of ease in the body, which then becomes a chronic disease, because the body is at disease with itself for an extended period of time, which then manifests as a physical disease. That's not woo-woo, that's just fucking physics. Right? So we owe it to ourselves as adults. Stop blaming the world and everybody else for your suffering, and take a active decision today to change your mentality and think, what can I do to help myself in this situation? If there's anything at all, well, how do I give meaning to this, which will stop me blaming the external world for my misery and then bring me back some of my power? Because what's this about? What's all this suffering about, Liam? Tinnitus or any autoimmune disease that seems to be bigger than us or more powerful than us? It's about control, right? What is it that we can control and what is it that we can't control? And by taking back your power, by saying, I am responsible, you get to control how you react, which is an essential part of healthy psychology in every human being, right?
Yeah.
How many people come to me and they say, my partner broke my heart. My partner broke my heart, right? It's a common cliche and everybody uses it. Yet the truth is, what happened is they broke your expectations.
Yeah, very true.
You have a set of values and a set of morals and ideology which you believe should be upheld for your blueprint of life to unfold in your favor.
I like that, actually.
That person violated your book of rules, hence broke your expectations of how you think things should be, And hence you feel like you do because you're out of control and your blueprint has now been violated. Nobody breaks your heart. You get very emotionally disturbed by somebody breaking your expectations. And again, that's not semantics. That's not clever wordplay. That's just fact.
How do your clients, do you just tell that on day one, or do you kind of like assess how they're going to react and then try to get them to realize it? Okay. Is that the key?
So an essential part of all therapy is to build rapport with your client or patient. Yeah. And the first thing I do, Liam, I don't sort of hit them between the eyes with like, okay, you're in tears because your husband cheated on you. I don't point the finger and say, okay, what part did you play in it? And he didn't break your heart. He broke your expectations. Of course, he's going to think, fuck, this guy's heartless. No. Yeah. I hold a space of unconditional love for every person that sits in my chair. And first of all, I'll hold that, what I call that quintessential feminine energy, the mother energy of how you would treat your own child if they were upset. It's okay. I understand you. It's okay. It's okay to be sad. I get it. I'm here for you. I'm here to listen. I'm here to hold that space for you. And then when they understand that they're held and they can trust you, then I'll introduce that male energy, that more directive, more solution-based, more, okay, action. This is what we've got to do now. And so, that's what I do.
That's very much like the difference between men and women. And I think that's where a lot of the communication breaks down in relationships, is because women think that men think that like they do, and vice versa. So, a woman will come home from work one day and like her boss was mean to her. And, she'll be talking to her husband, let's say, or a boyfriend. And she'll say to her husband, oh, like, my boss was so mean to me today. This happened and this happened. And the man will go, oh, you know what you should do in that situation? You should do this, this, and this. And the woman will go, oh, yeah, I guess so. And she'll completely shut down. And the guy will be like, oh, I solved that really well. But the problem was she didn't want it. She knows what to do. She already knows what the fuck she has to do. It's pretty obvious. But she wants to talk about it and discuss her feelings about it and everything. And the opposite happens when a man, comes home and he says, oh, I got annoyed from my boss, whatever. And then, the lady will be like, oh, how did you feel? Oh, then what happened? Oh, no, like, blah, 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 talking about all this stuff. But then the guy will still go sort of towards like, oh, no, what do you think I should do? And the woman will go, oh, I don't know. Like, how do you feel about it? And it's like total disconnect, because each other think that, their own reality, as we're talking about, that everyone else sees the world they do. And if they don't, then there's something wrong with them, because how can they not see the world like they do? Because it's so obviously right there. How can you not see it? You know what I mean? So that's just one. And I see this happen. This was so funny. I saw, and men we're pretty simple, aren't we? So we're pretty happy to just sit around and not do much and hang out and watch TV and blah, blah, blah. Whereas sometimes, and this obviously is not a hard and fast rule. There are differences even in the same person in different times and whatever. But I remember, women tend to like to talk to other people, and they're more interested in faces and humans and conversations, interaction. I remember once I was sitting in Indonesia, I was sitting in Bali, and I was working in this bar with my laptop. And there was on a table right next to me was this girl and a guy, and they must have been like 20 years old each. And they were obviously dating, and they were sitting on the same, they were sitting on the same side in a booth, and they were watching there was a small TV with like a UFC fight on, and I was kind of watching that a bit as well. And they started talking, talking whatever, just sitting there, and they're sitting in a bar, and the girl goes, oh, can we do something? And the guy goes, we are doing something. So he just was so accustomed to like, this is like a big deal. We're out and we're sitting here. Because when it's like guys meet up, like if me and you met up in person, we'd probably just sit somewhere and talk and whatever, or sit around or sit at the park or something or whatever. It'd be totally fine. Women want to talk more and maybe go and do something, and then do something a bit more engaging. Whereas I don't think men, we don't really need that much stimulation to be pretty, sort of stimulated. We're pretty simple. Yeah. So I just see that a lot with relationships, and I'm sure you do too.
I think that's what's so powerful about having a therapist, because as you rightly alluded to, a woman wants to be listened to and understood. Effectively, she doesn't always want directive or solutions. She just wants to be understood, that you're there, that you're listening, you're paying attention to her, because women want to have attention all the time. It's not.
I know,
it's
yeah.
not like men. It's not like men where we can take it or leave it. Women love attention. They love to be understood. They love to be listened to because they're more emotionally driven than we are. They're more. Again, as a generalization, they're more emotionally intelligent, they're more nurturing, they're usually more compassionate and empathetic to each other's suffering and pain. And so when they come home and they're suffering, they want you to hold that space for them again, where they can unpack all that, and they want you to be there to listen, not for directives. And, a classic example is that, for instance, a man and a woman are on a road trip together. Right, and the woman all of a sudden says, "Hey, love, do you want to pull into the next service station so you can get a coffee and so you can go to the bathroom?" Right? If you know women speak, what she really means is, "I want a coffee and I want to go to the bathroom, and you need to understand that I need that, and you should already have preempted it."
Yeah, I remember you actually told me that, and I thought, "Holy crap, that's so true." I look back on my own life, and I kind of just went like, "Oh my god!"
Okay.
When it's like, "Oh, do you want to do this?" Yeah, because to us, I wouldn't ask you if you wanted to do something unless I actually just thought you wanted to do it. You know what I mean? If I wanted to, it's just totally different. Like
it's the Venus and Mars conundrum, and on the flip side of that, as an example for a male. A woman asks a man out. She says to him, "Would you like to go out for a drink on Wednesday night?" And he says, "No, I can't." So for him, that's cut and dry because he obviously has other things to do. For the woman, in her mind, okay, is he married? Is he gay? Does he not fancy me? Am I not good looking enough? All these things are running in her software. And the answer is he's probably busy on Wednesday night. And that's it. Nothing more than that. That's how the male and female, we process things so differently as a generalization in the majority. Of course, there are alpha females who are very, very male dominant. When we speak, we have to speak in majorities because if we didn't, we'd have no conversation, right? Yeah.
And there's also, I think, it's like opposites attract. So when you see, for example, like a lesbian couple, who were like, you could say, well, we just spoke about then, like, oh, women are generally like this. You'll often see that there's one who's more manly or more masculine, and the other one is more feminine. And the same thing usually applies with, a gay, like two men in a couple as well. Like one would, from what I've seen, like just, obviously, once again, that's another generalization, but one is normally more dominant and one is more, like top and bottom sort of thing. So one is more dominant and one is more feminine. And it just kind of works like that. It's like kind of like magnetism, isn't it?
Sure.
Like it just works a lot better like that.
Well, there's a great book. A guy called David Dada wrote a book, The Ways of a Superior Man.
I've read it, yeah.
Yeah, and he brought the attention to the world, but you have to have that polarity, that yin and yang of, alpha and beta. And that's not to say that you always play the same role, but you have to create that polarity because you can't have two alphas or two betas because the relationship will fall apart. Imagine, for instance, you get into a fight and the alpha in the relationship is usually the male, as a generalization again, in just using it as an example. Yep. And the female of the dynamic wants to meet him as an alpha, like the two stags butting heads on a mountainside. That's never going to work. Or two alpha gorillas beating their chests and facing off against each other. That's never going to work either. If one's alpha, the way you create that polarity is to go beta and level up that energy between the two people and then bring some sort of normality back to the conversation, some sort of emotional intelligence back to the conversation by, again, not meeting fire with fire, because that seldom ever works, right? Fighting for peace is oxymoronic. You've got a peace for peace, right?
Yeah,
You've got a peace for peace. And the same with being a lover. Okay, I'm the alpha in the bedroom, for instance, let's say. Yeah, if I want to be dominated, I've got to be willing to play the passive beta, and my partner's got to go alpha, right? You've got to create polarity in your relationships to uphold the duality which we are, right? And people don't understand that when they get into that two alphas and two betas, why they're in trouble. They're playing the same bloody role, and there's no polarity in the relationship. No polarity means failure.
And I think a lot of the times is when, if you've been an alpha your entire life, for example, if you're a man and you've never taken the time to understand what, a beta really acts like or is like, and you are constantly, telling your girlfriend or your wife, oh, I wish you were more decisive, or I wish you were more this, or I wish you'd just talk like this. And then they finally do it. And it ends up, as you said, in your relationship being in ruins. Or on the flip side, and I've seen this so many times personally, when I'll have like a friend who will be like a confident, strong dude, and then he'll get in a relationship, and the girl will just sort of be like, "Oh, I wish you were more caring, or I wish you were more loving, or I wish you'd like do this and do that." And then as soon as he starts to do it, she, basically can't get wet for him anymore because he's turned into a pussy. He's turned into like not the man that he was when she liked him and fell for him and wanted to be in a relationship because, and I feel like that's sort of like almost like a test to really see like how much you are really there firmly. Like especially if you're a man, some women might say like, oh, don't worry about going to the gym, just stay here with me. Or like, that scene in David Data's book, Way the Superior Man, when the soldier is getting on the train and the woman is crying and she's like, don't go, please don't go, oh my God. And then he goes off and he's like, what if he didn't go? And he popped off and he's like, all right, I'll just stay home then. She'd be like, oh, yeah, okay, good. Yeah, okay, good. Like, it kind of ruined the moment. And it's sort of like they love that, like, sort of, you do, even though they like really want you to not do this or don't, as long as it's not anything harmful or bad or pain, obviously, but within reason, as long as you're just strong and you stick to your kind of path, and no matter what they do, they can't throw you off it. That's really attractive, I'm sure, for men and women, depending on what side of the spectrum you're sort of on. And so that's one thing that people don't understand as well, is that what people say is generally not what they want. They want to feel us. They want to say that so they can feel a certain way when you do that thing. They want to have played a certain role in that event that might not make sense to you, but there's so much to it, isn't there? Like in terms of psychology and all that stuff.
You touched upon a few things there, and I'll address each one individually. And so the first thing was the familiarity, if you like, or the point of reference of an emotion that you think that you want, or a behavioral trait that you believe that you need in your life, yet if you have no point of reference for it in your life somewhere in your history, you're going to sabotage that, because sooner or later that novelty of wanting that thing will wear off, and then you'll crave the familiarity of what you're used to, which is your habit and pattern behavior. And so the woman that says to her man, for instance, I want you to be more loving, more caring, more soft, more tender, she may believe that she wants that, and many women do, and many women get that. So let me caveat that. Yet if your point of reference is from a relationship that you've observed, let's say with your primary caregivers, your mum and dad, there's anything but the caring, tactile, loving, nurturing relationship, and what you observed and experienced was one of maybe aggression, passive aggression, shouting, screaming, lack of emotional proximity, a lack of emotional availability, that's your familiar. So that becomes your pleasure, right? That becomes your pleasure column. And then when you meet a man later on in life that is the antithesis of that, you may find the novelty attractive, but you'll have no point of reference for it for authenticity, and you'll sabotage that relationship, and you'll go and find a man that replicates your childhood experiences and your childhood familiarity, and then wonder why your relationship never changes. You'll wonder why you look down at the guy in your bed or the woman in your bed and think, fuck, that's the same person with a different face.
Yep.
Right?
I've actually never thought about that.
Over and over again, and it's all subconscious, Liam. This is the difficulty. All this behavior is unconscious, below the level of conscious awareness, because it was all created in the formative years between 0 and 6, which means you can't remember the meaning you gave to the events which became your habitual familiarity. Look at the word familiarity. Break it down. Where does it come from?
Family.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. So your familiarity is what you experienced growing up in your formative subconscious years, which are now playing out as your habitual responses. Yet even when you say you don't want them, if you've got no point of reference for something else, you will always seek out what's familiar, because the brain does that. It wants to predict in order to stay safe. The power of belief, because that is something that people really want to know about, Liam, because the way you beat tinnitus, you cured what mainstream science says is incurable. You have created silence in a condition that the mainstream medicine model says is impossible to do. And you've also got many, many people that have also achieved silence. Not only that, doctors, good doctors, medical professionals, experts told you that you were going to lose your feet and your hands just recently, right? And not only did you not lose your feet and your hands, you did it on the back of your own belief in your ability to make the right decisions for you. Right?
Yeah, so we can, should I tell a bit of a story about that?
Well,
and get into that?
Before you do that, I want to create like a framework. And so when they understand what I'm saying now, they can align this with the story you're going to tell. And when they align these two things, it will make so much more sense, Liam, and also this psychological piece for tinnitus and how to overcome it, or overcome any condition which is effectively autoimmune or something you think is beyond your control. This all comes down to the science of belief, right? So let me tell you a little metaphor. The Buddhist, or the Christian, or the Muslim, or the Jew, all get answers to their prayers despite enormous differences in their stated beliefs, right?
Right.
How can this be? The answer is not because of the particular creed or religion or affiliation, but solely because of faith, or the mental acceptance and receptivity about that for which they're praying for, or what they desire, right? So it's not their God of choice which facilitates the healing, but their unbending belief, which is transmitted to the subconscious mind, which creates the environment for healing. Whether it's carnivore or vegan, or whether you worship a Mars bar, a pork sandwich, or a Diet Pepsi, I don't care. If you believe it strongly enough, you will receive and achieve it.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. It's belief. Like, that is really, because when we're talking about belief, I think that you also inadvertently do things that will move you towards your goal. And then, of course, there's the fact that, with belief usually becomes, depending on, as long as you're believing in something positive you want to happen, then you're reducing stress, because you have this relaxed knowledge that it will happen. This will be okay. This is going to happen in the way that I want it to. The outcome is inevitable. It's going to happen this way. That's sort of it. No matter what I do, it's going to happen.
Amazing.
I mean, usually there is some sort of mechanism behind it. Like, for religious people, they have prayer. As long as I say my prayers, I'll have that which I want, as long as I am a good Christian or a good, whatever it is. It's like that. But yeah, I agree 100%. Belief is, and that's what I see a lot of people, because obviously I work in a field where belief is scarce, because their beliefs get changed to think that they're incurable. And so all I see is a lot of fear and a lot of like destitution and a lot of like worry and a lot of, anything but belief, basically, because there's like me, and then there's like maybe a couple of other people on the internet, on the whole internet, that are basically saying like, you can fix it, you can change tinnitus, you can reverse it, and then everywhere else is just a sea of like horror and like negative people and like these bullshit doctors who get taught these really silly things, in my opinion, that aren't really based on anything apart from pharmaceuticals. It goes in one ear, they get taught that the patient tells you this symptom, and then you've got to remember the name of the pharmaceutical so you can tell them to take it, that sort of thing. And so, I think that's, and when it comes to tinnitus, what's it going to be? It's going to be an antidepressant for tinnitus, so you can learn to live with it. Like, I'm sure if anyone has a ringing or, a lot of pain or a vision problem, if they take enough Zambian, or they take enough Xanax or whatever, they're probably going to not worry about it too much. That's why people drug themselves with alcohol and marijuana and, too many psychedelics and party drugs and stuff. But yeah, belief is, I think that's a massive part that people, it's hard to get. It's really hard because, you get told that you get your belief from authority. That's really what people get told. Ever since they're very young, they get told, I'll tell you how to think. This is how you think. Here's the authority on it. They're going to tell you how to think. Listen to them. And unfortunately, the authorities are funded by people who don't necessarily have your best interests at heart. They have shareholders, which is what we were just talking about before. So who do you turn to then? It's like, what do you do then? Well, then you got to kind of understand that everyone's different and you have to try things. You got to try things on yourself. And that's kind of what I came to, when I had my tinnitus. I remember the day that I knew if anyone was going to do it, it was going to be me. And it was an appointment with a brand new ENT, and he was first year out of school, or first year out of placement as an ENT, and he took a FaceTime call during our appointment. And it was a 15-minute consult. How much can you learn about someone in 15 minutes, right? That should have been my first indication. And so he took a phone call, a FaceTime, and he started talking to his drunk friends, and they were like, oh, come out. And he's like, oh, I wish I could, but I can't. I've got to see a patient. And I was sitting like, a meter away from him, just like, this guy does not care about me at all. And then I was like, oh, anyway, so Liam, yeah, here's a diagram of an ear. You've damaged this. You can't fix it. And I was like, oh, but what about like this nut doesn't work? Oh, but what about nut doesn't work? He just didn't want to hear it. He was like, I don't want to hear your shit, like bullshit ideas. And there's a great picture on this, and about like a patient the patient always thinks they know best. And well, it's kind of like, if you're a patient and you've had something for like 5 years or 4 years, then you're probably going to know more about it from research and trial and error than a doctor who took 1 3-hour session on that specific thing in his whole time of training. And so just because someone is a doctor or a police officer or like a lawyer doesn't necessarily mean that they know better than you about one specific thing. A badge or a gun or a certificate on the wall or a white coat or a big truck with alarms doesn't mean that they should have control over you or tell you how to feel or let you know how the rest of your life is going to go. They don't even know you. They've known you for 15 fucking minutes. How could they possibly know how your life is going to turn out? You're going to have to learn to live with it. You're going to have to habituate to tinnitus. Oh, you can still live a good life. Here's some pamphlets. Pay on the way out. Bye. That's it. It's like, does that sound like a health and wellness company to you? No, it sounds like a business. It sounds like a scam to me. Anyway, so do you want me to talk a bit about tinnitus or go into, okay, keep going. Okay, so basically that's what got me started on, trying to figure it out myself. And so I look back into my past and I realized that basically every single doctor that I'd ever seen for any condition basically fucked me royally. And so what do they always try and do? They put me on medication. So I had ulcerative colitis ever since I was young, and that basically means I was crapping my pants every day. And they put me on Salifolk, which is a granule sachet drug, and it did work. It did actually help, to be honest. But then my dad was on the same thing for a little while, and then now his kidneys are failing in a really bad way because of that drug, and he can't sue because you can't sue a doctor basically for giving you a drug because they're protected. Go figure. But if they give you dietary advice and you get sick, they do get sued. To do the maths on that, right? Ugh. So I look back and I fixed my ulcerative colitis by, funnily enough, going vegan. But I didn't go, full vegan. I did, but I didn't have the carbohydrates and the processed garbage, like the fake milks and all that, like oatmeal and all that sort of stuff. I just ate plants and fruits, so vegetables and fruits and some nuts. That was it. And I fixed my colitis. And I thought that it was because I went vegan and plants were healthy, which is not necessarily true in large amounts. But what I was doing was I was cutting out the processed foods and cutting out the coffee, and that's what did it. Okay, so I had the tinnitus, and I went vegan when I had tinnitus, and my symptoms got better. I was like, oh my god, diet is the answer. This is everything. And so then I traveled around. I went to Chiang Mai because Chiang Mai is one of the biggest vegan hubs in the world, and that's definitely not why I live there now. And so I went there, and my tinnitus got better, and then it plateaued. And then I started to get a bit sick because I was only eating plants, and basically it was just fasting, and you're eating a lot of salicylates and oxalates, and you're really just asking for problems, and I had, funny enough, I had digestion problems, and I started to get pimples and stuff like that. And then my tinnitus started to get worse again. So I thought, oh my God, like I'm gonna have this forever. But I had that sort of belief, the belief I had was I'm going to get rid of this, or I'm just going to die trying or kill myself. That was really it. That's how it kind of was. It was silence or nothing for me, or at least a manageable volume or nothing. That's how I thought. And so then I started to learn about cold showers, and I went to Romania and did like crazy shit. Like in the winter, I went there and I was going with people in clubs to go down ice lakes and get dunked into. I wrap this stuff around your chest and you get dunked into an ice lake, and so they can pull you up because you won't be able to move because it's so cold, so you don't drown in the water. I did that, and then I learned about fasting and stuff like that. I fixed my tinnitus by doing some really crazy shit, like 4 or 5 day dry fasts, and I was still eating plants at that time, mostly meat, but I still was eating plants. And then I went around and now I tell everybody about it. And there's other ways to do it now than long dry fast. But I will say this, I've never found anything as effective as a dry fast when it comes to big insides. It doesn't work for everybody, I'll be honest. But in terms of the highest number of people, that is the thing that does the most good. And, we can talk about that. But late December last year, I'll just tell you the food poisoning, and we can get into it. This is when it gets fun. So I've had food poisoning in the from last year and a half. I've had food poisoning 3 times. Once in Indonesia, I just went home and threw up, and that was it. End of story. And I kind of really, once again, we're talking about that responsibility. It was me. I decided to order food from this shitty place, and then I get to deal with it now. So toughen up, Liam, sort of thing. Look in the mirror and sort of wake up to yourself, that thing. I'm not going to blame the person for doing it. This dude by the side of the road, whatever. Got food poisoning. And then about 4 months later, I got food poisoning in Mexico City. That was really bad. That was throwing up stomach acid for 24 hours sort of thing. Like I had to crawl to the 7-Eleven to get Coke so that I could throw that up. I bought liters of Coke. I just wanted the Coke because I was like, if I'm going to cheat, I might as well do it when I'm really sick. And so I threw that up. And you know what's so funny about that? I was eating shit from the side of the road, tacos, for weeks. And as soon as I order one thing from a really nice food restaurant, I get really sick. So go figure, right? I don't know. So, and that lasted until the next morning. I didn't sleep. And I thought I was going to have to go to hospital for that one. I was actually kind of like concerned, but I thought I had salmonella, but I ended up being okay. And then last December, so about 5 months ago now, roughly 3 days before Christmas, I'm out with a mate of mine. And at this stage, I'm only eating like beef. So we go to the hot pots and get beef, and we get these slices of beef which are frozen, which is generally a good sign. And then you put them on the hot pot and you sear them right there in front of you, and you just cook them in fat. So, and they're beef too. So you can't really get sick from that as long as you cook it, which is, happy days, right? And then he comes along to Chiang Mai, a mate of mine, to visit, and he orders like these capsicum and stuff. And I'm like, we got to get 2 hot pots so you can put that shit on there. I don't want that anywhere near the beef. We actually did that. He had that. And then he ordered these chicken balls, and they came pre-cooked. So they imagine like chicken nuggets, basically. And so, I had one of those, and it kind of tasted a bit funny. And I was like, I ate half of it and just not going to have that again, whatever. And then I go home, and then I start to get these really cold shakes, like a really cold shiver sort of thing. And I know what it is straight away. I know it's like food poisoning, or at least what I thought was food poisoning, but it was very severe cold shakes. And so I thought, this is going to be quite bad. And so what I did was I started running a really hot bath. And then I immediately tried to make myself throw up, and I threw up a bit, went downstairs and got like 4 waters from the downstairs kitchen area. It's attached to this is Chiang Mai, by the way, Chiang Mai, Thailand. Go there, come upstairs, and I start sculling this water so I can have something to throw up, because, it's easier to throw up food when it's not just food by itself, obviously. So I have that. I get in the bath, and the bath, what I do is I do the bath till it's full, and then I keep it running, and I pull the sink out so hot water is continually going in it, so it stays hot, because I just assumed that it would sort of help with things move along, and it did. I felt really good. As soon as I got out, hit the floor, didn't feel good at all. Throwing up this was like 3 hours after I ate, throwing up in the sink, the toilet, on my all fours naked, and then projectile shit on the wall behind me. Like, it was bad. Like, it was, it was like really, really bad. And so the good thing about Chiang Mai is they don't have toilet paper. They have these squirt guns for your butt.
Yeah,
So I just shot the crap off the wall down the drain.
They're called shatats.
Shatats. Okay, I have to remember that because they saved my room cleaner's life, I'm sure.
Yeah.
It was all tiled, so it was all fine. Got into bed, and this was like 7 p.m. And I did fall asleep, but I had really weird dreams. And I woke up, and I was just about 20 times worse. And so I thought, this is actually not good. Like, I should be feeling better, and I feel much worse, and I can't see properly, and I'm really sore, and I'm like sweating bullets. And I was like, this is not good. So I call my mate. I'm like, call an ambulance right now. And they call an ambulance to come and get me. And I can hear them. It comes like in 45 minutes. So I'm just going like spiraling down. And my friend's like, shit, this is not good. I'm like, bed is drenched. I'm just lying there kind of like shaking like this. Like it's about to die basically. And so the people are laughing, pulling the wheelchair, the hospital crew. And as soon as they see me, shit, DEFCON 6 running in. And what's happened is I've started to develop thrombocytopenia. And what thrombocytes are, they're in your blood, and they're a clotting agent. So if I cut myself right now on the arm, I might bleed for like 10 minutes, but then it will start to clot, and the bleeding will stop. So basically they started to fail in me. So what happened was I started to get these bumps and these rashes, and there's a photo that's on my Instagram, and I'm covered in these rashes, and they're popping up, and it's just looking really, really bad. And I'm laying there in my sweat. So they run me down the stairs, lights and sirens to the hospital, go to the ICU, and the pain starts, and there's pain in my stomach, and it's getting really, like, I want you to imagine like someone's literally stabbing you like this again and again in the stomach. Like it's just like keeling over, still vomiting and shitting myself in the hospital. And then my friend is like, I'm not getting like any attention. So my friend's like, it's a doctor, by the way. He's a doctor. And so he's like, this is not good. Please help my friend. Pump me full of antibiotics straight away. Rinse me out. I'm like, yes, give me the antibiotics. Like, give me any, because, sometimes I talk shit about Western medicine. Yeah, I'm going to take the antibiotics, of course. I make sure it's not gentamicin or anything like that to like mess with my ears. But I'll just give it to me. And so they come up and they give me fentanyl for the pain, which is obviously, the problem in the United States right now. And, for like half a second, I was like, oh, do I really want to start taking this hardcore shit? And then the pain kicked in. I was like, yes, give it to me. And so they hardline it straight into me. So normally they put a drip in you and they put it in that. She just gave it to me straight away, shoot it into the veins like a heroin addict does, because it was so obvious that I was in a lot of pain. And then, right then I could understand how people could be heroin addicts and drug addicts, because everything, all the worries just went away, and I was floating like, kumbaya and stuff. And it really works, that shit. Oh my God. But the problem is with fentanyl is you can only give it every 2 hours, and it has a 30-minute lifespan. So half an hour later, the pain was back, and they couldn't give me anything for an hour and a half. So I started to go downhill. They took me to another hospital with a proper ICU, and basically I was there for 5 hours, and then I died. So my heart just stopped. I died. I had liver failure. I was just, they were like, basically everyone rushed into the room and put one of those hand pumps over my mouth straight away. And I was like, what the hell's going on? And then I woke up, and they'd actually tied me to the bed, because previously to that, I was in so much pain. I was hallucinating, and I was trying to get away. And I was like, get the fuck off me. Like, you're all insane. I need to go home and have a bath. I was like, I need to go home and have a bath right now, because I thought that would help with the pain. And they were like, your oxygen and vitals are really low. You cannot even leave this hospital. And so they've tied me down, and I wake up and they're like, you just died. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe I'll stay. Maybe I'll stay in the hospital. Right. And so what I see is, as I've worked, because my hands had started turning red at that stage when I was in the hospital. I could see them turning red, and my feet too. And when I woken up, they'd drawn lines on my hands and feet, because when I was asleep, when I died, my hands had literally that quickly started to turn gangrenous. So it started to go black from the tips. And so they were like, we need to cut off your hands and feet, Liam, because otherwise the gangrene will spread to a major artery and you'll die instantly from a heart attack. I'd already died of a heart attack. I had myocarditis, which is failure of the heart muscle. And so I'd woken up with that. And then I fell asleep. And the next time I woke up, my family was there. And basically they just come to say goodbye, because I was going to die. And so they'd all come in, and they were like, it's not looking good. And then I spoke to the doctor, and they said, because I was like, at this point, I was just so fucked up on drugs and everything. And I was not really even aware of what was really, I couldn't talk. I had ulcers in my mouth. I had floaters in my eyes. I couldn't see anything. I was in so much pain. My hands and feet felt like they were constantly on a frying pan because they were dying. Like I cannot explain the pain I was in for about 3 weeks. It was unbelievable. It was just something else. And so, you know, and then it kind of settles down and I'm on, you know, pain meds, and they give me straight into my veins sort of morphine and stuff. They gave me ketamine when I was back in Australia, which worked better because it's a nerve painkiller. Anyway, so, you know, a week into that, and they're like, you're going to lose your hands and feet. We're going to have to cut them off. You know, you can still live a good life, but we're going to cut them off. And I say, fucking, you are not coming anywhere near me. You are not cutting us. You know what? You're not cutting a fingernail, mate. Like, no way. And so basically the option for me was this: Liam, we have to cut off your hands and feet. Otherwise the gangrene will spread to your heart and you will die. Okay. What's the other option? Well, we can wait and see what your body does, and maybe you'll die. Or maybe the gangrene will demarcate, which means that the black will retract and we'll be able to save some of your hands and some of your feet. And I said, I'm going to go for option 2. Thank you very much, obviously. And I was like, I'd rather die than live without hands and feet, especially hands. No feet, yeah, I could probably deal with that. I've got no toes now. It's no big deal. But no hands, no, I'm not going to be a burden to anyone else. You know, I don't want to live like that. And so basically, long story short, I get better, and I get better quickly, really quickly. And so and I attribute it to when I could eventually eat, because I couldn't eat. I lost about 18 kilos in 10 days because I was vomiting and I was sweating and I was pissing myself and shitting myself, and I wasn't eating anything, because as soon as I tried to put a food drip in my nose or anything like that, my stomach would shut down. So they were like, oh shit, take it out. You know, it's not good. That's not good to put food in there. I think you can cause even further problems with that in terms of blood and stuff. And so I was getting better quickly, and I attribute it to, I wouldn't eat any of the hospital food. I made my mum bring me meat from just general stores. Like I would get steak and a bit of meat, and I would eat the meat, and sometimes I'll bring in hospital food and it would be fish and eggs. I'd eat the fish, I'd eat the eggs, and I'd skip the rice, and I got better quickly. And they said, can you wiggle your toes for me? And I could wiggle my toes, and they go, whoa, okay, can you wiggle your hands? Wiggle my hands. Whoa, they couldn't believe that I could move my hands and feet. They were like, and also my nose and ears had both gone completely black too. And they were like, you're going to lose your nose, feet, hands, and ears. And I was like, I would rather die. Like, not a chance. And so that had started to crust off. And they were like, we've never seen anything like this. So I wasn't eating any shit food. I was taking all the pills they were giving me. Like, they were giving me antibiotics and anti-inflammatories and saline rinses and magnesium and stuff like that. Yep, I'll take that. Give that to me. Cool. And obviously the painkillers. I was on fentanyl every 2 hours for weeks, just like hammer it. Otherwise, the pain was just unbearable. And I was on morphine and stuff like that, and the Panadol and whatever that was going to do. But I just took it. Why not? And so I started to get better and better. In Australia, I get to Australia. Oh, Liam, you're going to lose your hands and feet. Once again, you're going to lose your hands and feet. Sorry about that. Said, fuck you, I'm not. And then I didn't. And what happened was the blackness on my hands and feet, and I never once thought that I was going to lose them. It didn't even cross my mind that I was going to lose them. I couldn't even, I would describe it as a lack of comprehension of what they were saying. Like, it's like they were talking a different language. I couldn't understand what they were saying when they said you're going to lose your hands and feet. I was like, I'm obviously not going to lose my hands and feet, even though there was no good indication that I wasn't. It wasn't as though I read a textbook on gangrene and they hadn't read it. It was just like, no, I'm not. Look, like, I'm not going to lose them. Like, I don't think I am. All right, see you later, whatever. And I hated them. And they're called the vascular. The vascular is normally people who do amputations and assess for, digital amputations, which is like your fingers and your hands and stuff. First, I thought I was going to lose my hands and feet. Then I thought I was going to lose my fingers and toes. I ended up losing, as I said before, all the toes on my left foot and just the front bit of the toes on my right foot. But it came down from, supposed to lose both my hands and feet. And they were like, hey, well, it's so interesting, fucking doctors, right? Like, I tell them, they'd see how well I'm getting. And they're like, I was walking around, and it took me about a month from when I got sick. And they thought I was going to be in hospital for a year. They're like, you're going to be in hospital for like a year and a half. You are royally fucked, basically. You are. Most of the doctors are like, I've never seen someone this sick at your age, like this quickly. Like I've never seen it because it was just that bad. So I just got so unlucky. They thought it was streptococcus or streptococcus, or they thought it might have been a tick bite or something else, or something that they didn't know. They couldn't find out what it was. They tried to culture my blood, couldn't figure it out. They had no idea what it was. So still to this day, I don't know if it was food poisoning.
Yeah.
That was what was so annoying about it. Sorry?
But that was, as you were talking, you know, from 15 minutes ago, I wrote down, did your friend not get any of the symptoms from eating the same thing?
Nah, he got nothing. No problem whatsoever.
It would appear then, wouldn't it, that something significant entered your body, whether through a bite or whether it was food. But do you believe it was that chicken nugget, or it could have been something else?
I think it was probably the chicken, because I know what food poisoning feels like from the last 2 years. I get a bit cold shakes and stuff like that. And I think I just picked up the wrong piece of chicken, and maybe it was strep, or they thought it was a bacterial, they called it like an endotoxin. They believe it was some sort of bacteria that emitted a toxin, and the toxin is what caused the necrosis in the hands and feet and the septicemia and the blood toxicity, which they said I had. But they couldn't. They cultured my blood and urine and feces and spit and everything, put it under microscopes, sent it off to facilities, could not find out what it was. I have no idea what it was that caused it, which is really kind of annoying, because I just wanted some closure. I was like, well, what was it that did it? But the entire time I just kept thinking like, well, I did it to myself with whatever I chose to eat. I didn't really want to eat it, and then I ate it. So, you know, whose fault is that, sort of thing? So I ate it. And then, you know, I got better and better. And every time I told them, it's because I'm eating really well. My mum is bringing me in steak and liver, and I'm eating eggs, fish, steak, and liver. And like, that's it. And everything is going so well. I'm putting on weight back on. You should have seen how skinny and gaunt I was. And then I just put on weight like that, saturated fat. And the doctors were like, oh no, that won't be it. It'll just be because you're young or something like that. I was like, did you not see how sick I was previously? Is that because I'm young too? Like, unbelievable. Like, there's a disconnect, you know? And they're really interested to know how I did it until I start talking about nutrition. Because what do doctors get taught? Nutrition has no bearing on health. They think it has no bearing. I had one doctor who's talking to me, and as I was talking, the lady came in and brought me in the food, which was cereal, dessert, coffee, tea, a little cake, and like a loaf of bread, like a piece of bread and toast. Basically, shit I wouldn't give to a fucking dog. And then she walks away, and the doctor says, all right, well, be healthy and remember to eat your protein, as he pushes this Kellogg's towards me. Protein in Kellogg's. I was like, get fucked. Like, whatever they're teaching you, you should ask for your money back, mate. Like, it was unbelievable. And so, you know, and I just chucked that shit in the bin. I was like, stop bringing me the food. I'm just throwing it in the bin. And I just kept throwing the bin. I just ate the steak and liver. And, you know, I was on Sean Baker's podcast recently talking about my healing, and Darren Schmidt did a video on me. Yeah. So, you know, it's very, very interesting. And people are like, you know, even though it was meat that made me sick, you could argue, but it was like this processed chicken that I wouldn't even classify as meat. It was mixed with like other stuff, and it was just garbage food that no one should be eating. And then, you know, I ate plenty of meat to make me better, and I just basically am 100% now. I've still got a bit of a, sorry?
Did you go on Sean Baker's podcast, or you just cited your case?
No, I did an interview on his podcast the other day.
Really?
So I got interviewed by him, and also I did like a story with him for like an hour, and we spoke about it because obviously he's like the big pro meat guy. And then I did another success story with one of his people about like, about the same sort of thing, but more condensed. So I'm still waiting. He's released the shorter one. I'm still waiting for him to release the longer one, which should be out on their MeatRx YouTube channel. They say any day now. So I'm just waiting for that. But yeah,
that's that's brilliant. What a great platform for you to promote not just yourself, but the dietary protocol which you use to, along with, again, the science of belief in yourself. Because this, for me, this is the part that really interests me, Liam. Because as you said, when you first started eating vegan foods, you cleared your tinnitus up almost immediately, also just by going very, very strict and believing that you can. Because I think your greatest gift, Liam, is that whatever you believe you can do, you can do. Because not only do you believe it, you actually do it, which confirms your belief.
Yeah, exactly. I've always had that belief. It's just like, why not me? Like, why can't I do it? Like, there's no reason why I can't do it.
And that's why, that is, people don't understand. That is what faith is about. It's not the God that's curing you. It's your subconscious powerhouse, which is driving everything behind the scenes, your breathing, your immune system, your nervous system, your heart rate. The subconscious not only does that involuntary without your input, it's also healing you. Like there's a saying, the doctor covers the wound, but the subconscious heals it.
I like that.
And so if you can get to a space where you truly align with what you believe consciously, with what subconsciously is being conveyed to it, and there's no conflict between the two minds, you will literally achieve whatever it is that you give to your subconscious to do, which is why before you go to sleep at night, affirm good health. Be sure that you're going to feel well. Be sure that you're not going to allow your focus to go to a space which is disempowering or not enhancing your ability to be your greatest version. These are so misunderstood concepts, and if we can understand how powerful the subconscious mind is and how to empower yourselves by really taking control of that, taking control of your subconscious, unconscious mind, and directing it in a certain way, which you've done expertly, not only to overcome your tinnitus, but to literally overcome death and amputation based not only on the meat that you eat, but it's the fact that what you believe the meat does for you is what's really driving this underlying mechanism of healing, which is if people could tap into that, Liam, if they could really believe what they was doing and what they were saying, and there was no conflict between the conscious and the unconscious, you can literally do whatever you want and heal whatever you want. And this has been cited around the world for thousands of years. What do you think a miracle is? A miracle is nothing more than unconscious belief aligning with your conscious desire and prayer, and that gets answered because you believe so strongly that it's already happened, it's going to happen. That's what the unconscious does, because inside you, Liam, and inside every human being, there is a blueprint that exists in every cell of your DNA for optimum physical, emotional, and psychological well-being. And that blueprint has healing codes. And when you switch them on through faith and belief, unless you switch them off with a belief that you can't do it, it does what it was meant to do. It built you, it can reconstruct you.
Yeah, I'd believe that for sure, because and I think it's exactly what you just said then, which is like when you're conscious and your subconscious, when they're like congruent, yes. When there's no mismatch and there's no like niggling little thought like I don't know if you can do that. Oh, I don't know, and it's like part of it comes to like giving yourself the right to do it. You have to give yourself the right to succeed in the fitness area of your life. Or you have to give yourself the right to, separate yourself from a toxic person. Or you have to give yourself the right to be able to heal a certain wound, whether physical or mental. And people might say like, oh, well, all this talk about giving yourself the right, I'll just take the medicine and talk to the doctor. And it's like, well, someone else somewhere who started the pharmaceutical company was like, I'm going to be a billionaire, and they did it, and now you're like the sort of like the pawn in that. They gave themselves the right to basically fuck you over. And that's working. So it's just silly. But yeah, I agree 100%. Like belief is such a big part of it. Like let me give you such a prime example of like belief. Like I'll have people who might have tinnitus for like 3 years, and then they'll come to me and, they'll start working with me, and they'll get their tinnitus down by like 50% in like a month or like however long it takes. And they're like, oh, Liam, my tinnitus went down by this much or however much. Is that a good thing? And then it's like, what the fuck? Like they don't have the belief that they can get rid of it. So they need me to like keep telling them, this is good. You will do well. You will succeed, because no one else has given it to them, and they haven't given it to themselves. So the people that I see this, the people that always do the best in, my group and with the course, generally are the ones who are very nonchalant. They're like, you know what, I'm going to give this a go, and I'm very open to it. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I you know, you sound like you know what you're talking about. I'm just going to give it a crack and whatever. And they're generally the ones who do really well. And then I'll follow up and I'll be like, so how did it all go? And like, oh yeah, my tinnitus is gone. I was like, you didn't want to tell me? Like, that's amazing. Like, yeah, thanks, man. See you later. Like, yep, all right. But the ones who are like really, they don't care about, you know, doing everything perfectly and all this sort of stuff. They just kind of jump on board and go, fuck it, I'll just give it a go. I'm not going to put a toe in, but if I'm going to do it, I'm going to just, you know, go into it and just sort of like a circular item through a square hole sort of thing. They won't worry about getting it right. They'll worry about doing something. You know, they want to do something right. And we've all seen that, like people who are sort of like in anything, very nitpicky, and they want to do everything right. That's because I don't think they really believe that it'll work. They believe in, like, you know, the system more than themselves. You know, they don't believe that they can get better, but they believe like a magical system will work. And that is true to an extent. You're doing the right information. But if you don't really believe that you can do it, then, you know, you're going to be worried and frantic about every little thing. Because if you believe that you would do it, you would just start and just keep doing it until it worked. You wouldn't worry about getting it right the first time. Wait, I got to plug my computer in 1 second. It's just a little bit low on battery. Sorry.
This is why, Liam, the placebo effect is so strong for some people. It doesn't work for others. And I did a podcast yesterday on ignorance and how ignorance is not blissful. Yet it can be blissful and it can be very productive if you don't allow your own intelligence to get in your own way. Because sometimes when you know too much and you're an expert on many topics, you're already almost pre-guessing what the expert is going to tell you about something, and you've already tried that. And so the expert then doesn't become in a position of power for you to look up to and for you to believe in, because you already know what they're going to say. You know, I've had this many times with many doctors over the years, Liam, when I've gone to see different doctors with different conditions. And because I'm well-read and well-studied, I know the modality they're going to use with me, and I already preempt it. And because I've tried that and it hasn't worked, I've got no faith in them telling me that this is what you've got to do because I've tried it and it doesn't work. And so the placebo won't work on me if I'm aware of that which they're trying to share with me. If for you, right, you know, the nonchalant people, not the perfectionists, because they're a different breed altogether, but the nonchalant people that look up to you as an authority, if you tell them something that they don't know and they have faith in your ability to have done the research because you've cured yourself, so you're an expert in the field, and they have faith in you and they believe in you, they will create the environment within themselves to turn on the healing process. And as long as they don't get in the way and sabotage that by second-guessing themselves, they will come to the same outcome as you, because success always leaves clues.
That's 100% true. And I even have, on that same token, I have people who are, you know, they're kind of like worrywarts, to put it like in very, like, you know, unprofessional terms. And, you know, they're always worrying, and their emotions go like this. You know, one day they're like, this is amazing, this is working, this is fantastic, I can barely hear it. And the next day, not because it increased in volume, their tinnitus, but just because they just had a, you know, emotionally bad day, and they're like, oh my God, when will this go away? I've been working at it, it's nearly gone. Why isn't it completely gone? And those are people who will basically, it's going to be hard for them to ever get silence, because they're so emotionally volatile. And as we spoke about, stress has a direct effect on the mitochondria. And I believe that's a big part of tinnitus, is mitochondrial function, which is in the cochlea, in the ear, in the base of the stereocilia, which is like the hair cells. But, you know, those people, you know, they need to harness their emotions. And, like, you know, it's so much easier for the relaxed people in the beginning, because they're already like halfway there, because they're relaxed. So they won't really have to worry about that end point where it's like, oh, it's so close, why isn't it gone? Instead, they're like, this is amazing. Like, I can live even if it never went away and it's still really quiet, I can live an amazing life. And you've won already then, basically. And then it just goes away, basically. Right.
And so perfectionists, which, you know, I deal a lot with perfectionism because it's a shame-based emotion that comes from childhood experiences. You find the perfectionists, that does lend itself to tinnitus, because perfectionists are absolute control freaks, right? They have to control both their internal and their external environment to feel safe in the world. And so when tinnitus pays them a visit, which can be the result of too much stress, because it's a stressometer, and that buzz you're hearing is the stress in your system. The moment they get that, they can't get rid of it, is the moment they go on that war path, and it's a constant battle and a fight against it. And so they're always monitoring it 24 hours a day, every waking moment. Is it getting louder? Is it getting softer? Is it because I'm eating something? Is it the weather? Is it my wife? Is it my sex life? Is it my food? And that constant obsession with it is maintaining it in your direct consciousness, and you're sending a very powerful message to the unconscious saying, this is the only thing that's important in my life. Filter out everything else and keep this in my awareness because I need to control it. And what does tinnitus teach you? It's stronger than you, it's more consistent than you, and it doesn't debate. It's fucking there, and either you deal with it in a different way or you're going to have it forever. That's the message.
Yeah. And it's also sometimes it's a bit of a kick in the nuts, tinnitus, because it shows you that generally speaking, sometimes you've been doing something wrong. You've been mistreating yourself, or you need to take some time for yourself and reduce the stress, or maybe your nutrition or your lifestyle isn't very good. I get a lot of people who do shift work, night shift work, and just flog their bodies, like ruin their bodies, like, week at night, week and day, 3 days off sort of thing. Nurses, I get a lot of nurses I have to help. And, it's just, I couldn't imagine being a nurse with tinnitus. I mean, that would just be something else. But yeah, it's a rude awakening. And people who get it and get rid of it, they tell me that, it changed their life for the better, believe it or not, when it's gone, because they now are healthier, they're mentally aware. It really takes sometimes in life, let's say if you have a child, for example, I don't have a child, but I would imagine that you'd be battling with, you want him to go or her to go through some serious hardship, but you also want them to have not so hard of a life, because that if they go through some dark shit, not anything too bad, but some hard stuff, like learning that life is not fair, for example, like getting something stolen or whatever it is, that they're going to have to grow from that. But then on the other thing, we just spoke a lot about how your interpretation of an event will determine, what the event is to you and your reality. So I see it in life that a lot of, like, let's take dating, for example. Like I have lots of friends who, like, I had this one friend who obviously I won't name, but he is fucking awful with women. Like, he's just really bad at it. So he might start seeing a girl for a little while, and they're sleeping with one another, and it's full everything, and then he'll like fall in love too quickly, sort of thing. Fall in love, right? And so after like a month, he's like, I want to be with you forever. Let's be boyfriend and girlfriend. It's just a bit too much too soon. And then so she'll break it off like she always does. And, he's 27, he's my age. And so it's kind of heartbreaking to see someone at 27, a mate, like go through that. And then what's his interpretation of the event is like, oh, she's a slut, or she's a bitch, or like she's a terrible person. I hope she dies. Like really horrible stuff. Like really just like, oh my God. Like, I know, it's just like horrific stuff. And so I'm like, dude, hold on. Maybe like it's like, don't you see it? But I can see the pattern, it's so easy to see it. Like another Les Brown quote I like is, it's hard to see the picture when you're in the frame. Sometimes you can't see what you're doing when it's you doing it. You can't see yourself doing it. Yeah. And I can just see that he comes on too strong, and he can't see, oh, this is the one, Liam. I know it. This is the one. I'm like, okay, well, I'll be consoling you in a month. But and so, and his interpretation of it, it could be so good if he just went, you know what? I wonder if there's a pattern here. I wonder, and imagine what would happen if he blamed himself, which maybe, blame or take responsibility, imagine if you took responsibility for it and thought, I wonder what I did there. And like, maybe just asked me or not that I'm a super duper ladies man, or just anyone else around him who saw it unfold, or even asked her what went wrong. Then he learned from it. But that's too painful, I think. Exactly. It's too painful to hear. No one wants to hear the truth. Nobody wants to hear. Like, I was actually quite funny on my Instagram yesterday. I found this web page and it was called like the truth potato or something like that. And it was just this little cute potato saying these really like harsh things. And one of them was, no one gives a damn how hard your life is. And it's like this happy potato doing that sort of thing. And I was like, it softens the blow, so you can, that's like such a good way to present that. It's like such a nice, sweet thing. And so anyway, but yeah, that's just another interesting story about how people, first of all, get stuck in the same thing and will probably never change for the whole of his life, I would imagine, because generally, how often do people change? Only when they experience extreme hardship, Tony Robbins even says that. He says, like, you either change when it's too painful where you are or where you want it really bad. He says something like that, right? It's like something to that effect.
That's usually there's a line in the sand where you can no longer stand yourself or life for another second, and you're not willing to compromise any further. Then you reach out for professional help, and you get a therapist or a coach or both, and then you start to work on yourself, and you no longer will tolerate your former standards, right? Because that's what life is. What are your lowest standards you're willing to tolerate? And that includes the people that you date. That includes your own bullshit. Because I've never seen anybody make a breakthrough until they tire of defending their old bullshit.
I like that. And people do defend their own bullshit, don't they?
They spend their whole life they spend their whole life justifying why they do the things they do. And then they use that old rhetoric of, that's just who I am. You can't teach an old dog. Okay.
I hate that.
If you believe that, then what you're saying is you're unable to transcend beyond your childhood programming, but now you're an adult. And does that serve you? Obviously not. But that's their story, right? They've justified their beliefs and their behavior with a story that aligns with their narrative of whatever's going on in their world. And when you challenge that, the ego does not like to be challenged, because the ego is wrapped up in its self-identity and its self-image and how it needs to feel safe in its own world. And the moment you bring to the awareness of them that they have these weaknesses, these programs, these pattern behavior that doesn't serve them, if they're not ready to do the work, the ego will push back very strongly in what we in psychology call cognitive dissonance, when I introduce you into information and behavior that may challenge who you think you are, and you've got to do the work to undo all the stuff that you believe in to be you. You'll push back and you think, okay, I'm not willing to do the work. I don't want to go down that road. I know what I know. I'm happy to know what I know. And to don't know what I don't know makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's. I think I like that saying as well. Is you don't know what you don't know, and people don't know that they don't know something. Sorry,
it's pretty much everything, right? We live in an infinite universe which is always expanding. We are part of this universe which is always expanding. Yet we claim to know what we know, which is a fraction, because what we don't know is pretty much everything. Why? Because we live in a world, Liam, where breakfast truth is often dinner time's bullshit. That's how quick things move in this fast-moving world that we're part of. And for you to hang your hat on a belief system and say, okay, this is how things are, this is the way I am, I can't change, I don't want to change, that's okay. If that's your choice, that's okay. But realize then you're not going to move forward, and I can't help you, or no therapist or coach can help you, as long as you believe that's who you are and you're incapable of change. We know through plasticity, which is nothing more than repetition of new behavior, we can change pretty much anything about ourselves, right? It just takes repetition, which is the mother of all skill sets, consistency and discipline, and enough will to want something so badly, you're no longer going to accept that which doesn't serve you.
I like that when you want something. So, and also what you said about habit. I think habit is. I'm reading a book at the moment called, I think, Indestructible or Undistractable or something, and it's all about social media and how basically they pay. They consult with casino owners to get you more addicted to using it. But yeah, 100%. If you won't accept anything, and that's the thing with tinnitus. I get a lot of people who say, "Oh, I had it for 3 years and it was dealable and it was okay, and then it hit a really high volume and I was like, nah, I got to get rid of this for once and all because it hit that." I mean, that's more of like external, sorry, like an internal sort of unacceptance sort of thing, as in like a, or so I guess you could, even though tinnitus is inside the head, you know what I mean? It's like an external factor. Like, you know, it's like when you see a movie and people really, you see them hit their lowest low, or you hear like a story from a famous athlete or an actor, and it's like, you know, right before they hit their prime or whatever, they hit their lowest low. You know what I mean? Or a business person, they hit their lowest low before they, you know, decided that I'm not going to stop until I fix this. And I think that's what people really like to hear, is like the underdog, you know, who's just been shit on their whole life. And then one day, you know, they get fired from their job for an unfair reason or whatever it is. And then they come back and, you know, they become famous or whatever it is. And they really, like Frank Sinatra's story, not many people know, in the middle of his career, he lost everything and was like basically poor, and people stopped coming to his concerts and no one cared anymore. And then he came back, and his song he came back with was My Way, which was like, you know, such a cool story. But yeah, no, I agree with everything. And how do you think people can develop that sort of belief? Do you think there's a way to do it, or do they have to go through like the muck and the mire, or have to hit ground zero, or is there like a way to sort of, can people say like, if I keep going this way, I'm going to hit zero, or maybe I can just avoid hitting zero and just do the right thing? Or is there like a lack of motivation there for people?
Well, it's that's the word that I was about to bring to your attention. It's not the person's ability to change, it's their lack of motivation to change. That's what sets people apart. And here's the thing, some people don't get leverage over themselves, Liam, because if they don't love themselves enough to do the work necessary to change, then who do they love enough in their life that you could use as leverage to help them overcome an obstacle? Maybe a daughter or a son or a mother or a dad that you adore, or your grandmother that raised you, who's become eternally disappointed with your shitty behavior. If you can't change for you, can I get leverage over you by creating that emotional response inside you, by using the leverage point as the access into your ability to change, right? Who will you be? You tell me you love your grandmother, yet you're still disappointing her every single day. You're still letting her down every single day, right? You know, how much you love her, the woman who raised you, the woman who had so much high hopes for you. As an example, that's leverage, right? If you can't motivate yourself, get leverage over yourself by something else. But here's the thing, and I use this often as leverage, because people come to me and they say, I've tried everything, for instance, to lose these 20 kilos that I've been carrying since I gave birth to my son 4 years ago. And I literally tried everything. So my immediate response is, well, you haven't tried everything because you don't know everything. Right? You don't know what you don't know is the first thing. And you haven't tried everything, and you haven't been motivated enough to try everything. And so let me give you an example. And I'll use this as an example. And I will caveat it before I use this story, Liam, because it's fucking harsh. It's hard hitting. And I will say, I'm a mafia boss, right? And I come to your house in the middle of the night, and I take away the one thing that you claim to love more than yourself, which is your 4-year-old son. I take him away, I chloroform you, you wake up in the morning, your son's missing, you don't know what's happened, and you're frantic for 48 hours because I don't contact you, and you don't know what's going on, where your boy is he alive, is he dead? And then I call you, I'm the mafia boss. And bearing in mind, this woman is 20 kilos overweight because she eats too much chocolate. That's her poison, chocolate. Yeah. And so 48 hours later, I call up and I say to you, oh, this is so-and-so. I have your son here. Would you like to speak to him? The son gets on the phone, oh, Mummy, I'm scared. This crazy guy is bad now. I don't want to do. I want to come home. I take the phone off him. And then I say, Sharon, do you want to see your son again? Yeah, I'll do anything. I'll do anything. If you eat another piece of chocolate in the next month, and if you don't lose 5 kilos in the next month, you will see your son again, but it will be in pieces, in boxes. Would that be enough motivation to stop eating chocolate?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it would.
So don't tell me this, you can't do it, if you haven't got enough leverage or level of motivation to get the job done. That's the difference, Liam. And when you ask me what creates change, it's that massive realization that if I don't, I'm going to suffer beyond comprehension. That can be staying in a relationship that doesn't work, eating habits, an addiction of some sort. If you are prepared to really decide that this is the last day I will tolerate my own bullshit, nothing changes. Nothing changes. If it does, it's temporary. And then it's a change. It's a temporary change. It's not transformation. And I'm about transformation. That's a very different animal. If I take a napkin and fold it 4 times, I've changed the appearance of that napkin, but the essential quality of the napkin stays the same. Transformation is different, completely different structure. From the caterpillar to the butterfly. You've blossomed, you've flowered. Nothing exists of the old. That's a transformation. And for that to happen, you've got to completely let go of what you believe to be true and embrace a whole new set of ideas and a new set of beliefs until they're hardwired into your conditioning and you have a new habit. Because like you said about 10 minutes ago, everything you have in your life is because of your habits. Everything you don't have in your life is because of your habits.
Yeah, and you can't, the other thing as well, you can't get to where you want to be by doing the same thing you've been doing.
Impossible.
You know, what you've been doing has got you where you are.
Impossible,
you probably
right?
don't want to be there. Yeah.
So if you want something to change, nothing changes until your mindset changes. For your world to change, your mind has to change from the inside out.
So what advice, because I want to ask this question as well, but what advice would you give people with tinnitus who've just gotten it and they're like, oh my God, this is, forever. What the hell am I going to do? Everyone's telling me it's permanent. I'm doomed. I'm so scared. Because that's the normal reaction everyone has, is just horror. And, they're alone, they're lonely, that sort of thing.
Okay.
What would you say to them?
First, as I said earlier, success leaves clues. And so, first of all, I would role model those who have achieved what I wanted to achieve, i.e. people like yourself who went through that dark night of the soul and went on that hero's journey and defeated this tyrant, this condition called tinnitus, using a combination of all the protocols that you advise, which obviously work, coupled with the belief that you're going to get this thing done, and without any unbending saboteur coming in to really sort of sabotage your growth and your progress, to believe that you can get this done and to focus only on what you want. Focus on what you want, because if you focus on what you don't want, you're going to get more of it. Because whatever you focus on, you get more of, right? And so if you're driving in a car and you're forever looking in the rearview mirror, don't be surprised when you keep running into shit. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So important. Yeah. So role model what you do, Liam. Eat how you eat. Do what you do, coupled with this unbending faith that you will overcome this if you can focus on what you want. Because we can't focus on more than one thing. If you're focusing on tinnitus, it's going to get worse. If you're monitoring the noise, it's going to get worse. That's the uncomfortable truth.
Yeah, I agree with that 110%. Like, people who focus on it will freak themselves out. And then normally when you freak yourself out, you do stupid shit. And people start doing looking online for all like these different things. And then like I even had people who joined my course, and then like a week later they're looking online for like different stuff. And they're like, what do you think about this? And I'm just like, just stick with one thing at a time. I don't mind what you choose, but just stick with one thing at a time. And it's a 8-week course plus, so like they haven't gone through it obviously, so it's like just stick with one thing. Like, you need to get the mindset down first. I've got like 30 videos or so on mindset. It's just like, just do that. Like do the mindset and change that.
That's it.
It's like focus. It's just like you just have to pick one thing. There's so many books on focus, so they could just I think they should, people with tinnitus could just read a book on focus.
Find something they enjoy, Liam. You must find something that you enjoy, that you can engage with, where the tinnitus begins to drift off into the background because you're focused on something which gives you joy and pleasure. Without something to focus on, you're going to drift back to that which you don't want because you spent so much time doing it. It's become a hardwired habit. And so every waking moment, you're aware of the noise and the buzzing and the spitting and the hissing, and that can't go away as long as you're focused on it. It's impossible. So unless you can find other things to put your mind on through an extended period of time to create a new habit, you can only get more of what you're used to. It cannot go away any other way.
Yeah, it's such a huge thing. Like actually concentrating, like focusing your concentration on something else. And it's so hard when it's with tinnitus because it's always there.
That's right.
And that's why you really got to dig deep when you have tinnitus to like, because everyone is telling you that it can't be cured. Like the whole world is like, nah, like TED Talks and doctors and ENTs online and your own ENTs and your family and people on forums and people on YouTube channels who are even trying, they're meaning well. And they're like, how I live with tinnitus. And it's like, everyone is saying you cannot cure it. And then there's a couple of people who are like, yeah, you can cure it. And you're like, well, I don't know about like, you're like 1 out of 1,000 sort of thing. So it's like the belief is so hard to get. It's so, and also I think belief is a habit as well. Like, focusing what you just said on, not focusing on what you don't want and only being able to focus on what you do want, because, you know what you don't want and you know what you don't want. Everybody knows that. And so, you have to make the choice. It's like mindfulness meditation, focusing on, in and out on your breath. You got to focus only on what you want. Not on like, because people often tell me, oh my God, my life is going to be so bad. I was going to do this and now it's all over and blah, 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 which is fair enough. They're freaking out, but they're doing themselves such a disservice. They're making it 10 times worse by thinking about all the bad things. And that's like a tip I give people is never look up, I'm not the king of tinnitus. I don't know everything about it, but I tell people once you've found me, stop looking at shit online because it's all negative. It's all negative stuff. There's barely any hope out there. It's just a desert of negative people who are just complaining, just doing this, just running their mouths and complaining about how bad. And, it's hard not to complain sometimes, I guess. But
think about this, Liam. Think about this. Let's say that the person who's always telling her girlfriends how awful her boyfriend is, right? Every day. Yeah. They're getting these conversations, they're telling their friends, and their friends are agreeing with her. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, my boyfriend does the same sometimes. Isn't it awful? They are strengthening and cementing a belief system about their partner that they don't like, yet they're going to get more of because they're focusing on it. And then that's being confirmed back to them through an echo chamber of negativity based on the people you spend your time with. And so that's another thing I would also check on. Who are the people you're spending your time with? Are they adding fuel to your fire, or are they taking a piss on it? Right? Are they helping you over the war, or are they pulling you back? Because misery loves company. Misery loves company. And if you don't choose the 5 people you spend the most time with very carefully, you become the sum total of those 5 people that have an input into your life. We become the people we hang out with. We become the things we listen to. We become that which we watch. And if you don't get that part right also, you may find all your friends and all your habits are all geared towards negativity, to suffering, to poor me, to victimization. And so you start there. Start by looking at the friends you hang out with. Start by looking at the conversations that you have. Start by looking at the information that you take in on a daily basis. And then, does that align with my greatest version? Is that going to empower me, or is it going to disempower me? You've got to get strategic with this. This is no joke, right? This is not just tinnitus. This is anything. You've got to get strategic and guard your light with your life, because your fire is yours to protect. And people will put that shit out as soon as look at you, because misery loves company.
Yeah, that's the other thing about people putting it out is I often find that, when you tell people like a hope or a dream or an ambition, as sad as it sounds, most likely they will be like, oh, that's silly. Or, oh, I don't know about that. Have you thought about this? It just seems like it won't work. Like there's a really good TED Talk I saw, and it was talking about this, and it basically said like, protect your vision and don't tell like anyone about it, because they'll just, sadly, some people, even the people will want you to fail, because then that reflects poorly on them. Because if you're very familiar with this person and you're good friends with them, then you're probably similar. You do similar things, you have similar likes. And so if you succeed, that means that they succeed too, but they're not succeeding because of something deep inside them, or, you know, some failure in their life.
Sure.
And so, yeah, when it comes to succeeding in anything or whatever, getting over anything, I often tell people, just, you know, if you're going to speak to a therapist, That's great. They're trained in that. They know what to do. But if it's just like a family member or a friend, normally just don't fucking tell them, because they'll just make you feel worse.
Well,
like, you know, obviously if you know someone well, yeah, but like most of the time, it's like, don't do it. They'll just make you feel 10 times worse.
Well, most people are taking advice from those who haven't achieved what it is you want advice for.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. So if you want to know, you know, I wouldn't go into, you know, the next room and ask, like, you know, my dad how a spaceship works, or like how to, you know, whatever, or how to make $1 million or whatever it is, because he doesn't know. Just like he wouldn't come in here and ask me how to ride a bull because, you know, I've got no idea.
Absolutely.
No clue.
Also, you wouldn't take relationship advice from your friend who was divorced 4 times.
Yeah, no.
And you wouldn't take advice on dietary protocol from a guy that's 30 kilos overweight.
Yeah, exactly.
So take advice from those who've achieved what it is you want to achieve. Role model those who've achieved what it is you want in life. Ask them how they did it, because success leaves clues. And if you follow their success blueprint, it's highly likely you'll have the same outcome.
All right. Should we make some closing statements? Anything you want to say in closing?
Yeah, for sure. Again, we've been 2 hours on this, over 2 hours, way over 2 hours, in fact. And yeah, my closing statement is, the transformational takeaway from all this is, you do become what you focus on, and therefore you owe it to yourself to focus only on that which you want, and don't come off that and go back to what you don't want, because you will get more of that. And secondly, you are creating your reality one moment at a time by the meaning you are giving to whatever shows up in your life, event, circumstance, or situation. And it's that situation and circumstance, paradoxically, which is presenting itself to you for you to attain your own personal liberation and freedom, because life is revealing to you where you're still not free. That's the paradox. Right.
Okay. Well, mine's not going to be as good as that, because that was awesome. That was all. I'm glad this is recorded, actually. But mine is just, sometimes you have to be your own authority, because sometimes you won't be able to find one, or you'll want one and they won't be available to you in the medium that you want them to be. So, you know, sometimes you have to remember that every person that you look up to was once just like you, for the most part, you know, unless they were born into royalty, or, you know, they were, you know, genetically lucky. Like if you look at like Kobe Bryant, or like some sort of athlete thing, but most people that you want to be like, you know, that one day they were just like you, wanting to be just like someone else. Like that Simpsons episode where Homer's inventing stuff, and they see the guy they're, you know, jealous of was once jealous of somebody else, you know, and they compare each other to just remember that, you know, most people you meet and come into contact with in life are just like you. So be nice to them, because you'd want them to be nice to you too.
There you go. If your flower can bloom, every flower can bloom.
Yeah, exactly. I like that.
Right. Okay.
Cool.
Good man. It's been fun. It's been great.
It's been awesome, dude.
So
until next time.
Yeah, we'll do it again. We'll do it again next week, and you know, we'll do maybe a little shorter one, but we'll stay on topic. But it was great to catch up. And I'll send it over to you, and we'll speak next week and jump on it again.
Awesome, dude. I'll talk to you then.
See you, brother. Bye, mate.